Hey, long time no see, everybody. Oh, thank you.
Wait, by the way, just to get ahead, are we group one or are we group two? John's group.
The
one that doesn't move.
one that doesn't move. So just so everybody knows, we are now live on YouTube.
Hi, Linda.
Hi, Linda. Hey, Bill.
Yeah.
Christopher. Hey, Mike.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
Andy, I
Andy,
don't know
you're
how you did it, but you've turned yourself sideways.
I'm sideways?
Yeah.
You are. Yeah.
Where's the camera?
Yeah, you're sideways.
No.
Sideways. Is that better?
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, so when you turn the camera, it makes us sideways?
Yeah,
Oh, that's interesting.
that's strange. Yeah.
Well, we can look at you sideways.
Let's see if I'm plugged in. I like John's picture.
There.
I know.
I just can't bear to move everything around. But the camera is covered by a larger monitor, and to move that on a small desk is a mess. So I just keep up and put my picture there.
Well.
I am here.
There he is.
I am dressed and I'm appropriate. It's just that
I have that we're still missing John. Ah, there he is. As soon as John gets in, we'll go ahead and get started.
Okay. Steve,
All
can you unmute Rich?
I did unmute Rich.
He said he can't do it.
There you are.
Thank you.
And that may actually be true of anybody that mutes themselves afterwards.
I do
may have
believe
to
so.
Unmute you. That's the one disadvantage of the way we've got this set up. So if you don't mind, I'll get us started, just so that everybody kind of is clear. This is a public meeting and that it is being set out. We are recording it. I just want to make sure I do that as well. So we are recording it, plus we're sending it live to YouTube. And we will do that through the meeting and through the process. Because of the way the workshop is tonight, there will be a breakout session. That breakout session will require that some of you actually leave this meeting and go to another meeting. And in a few moments, I will send you an email with that location. And we're doing that because we found that there's a problem recording when we do the recording of the breakout sessions, we have to be able to record to the cloud, because for whatever reason, when we record to the computers, there's a problem. So I will ask some of you to leave. And so I'm gonna actually, let me finish something and then I'll send you that email. During the breakout session, we will be asking that to help guide the conversation, that you physically raise your hand so that people can see it when you want to talk. And that way the moderator will call on you, and that way we can keep the process semi-orderly and we're not talking over one another as we get going. The other thing that we want to make sure is that during the meeting, Want to make sure everybody understands that we are not taking public comment. Public comment has had an opportunity to be given through the different types of meetings that we had, through the opportunity to fill out the survey for the individual groups that the strategic plan committee met with, and public comment will be able to be given when we put all of this together. This is a workshop, and I have cleared that with the solicitor that doing public comment, we will not be doing that during this time. That way we can stay focused. Not that public comment keeps us from being focused, but we can stay focused on what we're doing, and we can get to where we want to be with trying to keep our time limited for these meetings. And so I just wanted everybody to kind of understand that. So we will not be taking public comment during the meeting. However, the public is welcome to sit and watch, and we'll be recording this session and recording the breakout session. And the public can choose to leave this one and go to the breakout session that half the group will be in as well. That you can go in and do that, either one. And that will be posted as soon as we send out the email. And so we can go ahead and post that now, Suzanne, and I'll go ahead and send the email just so that it gets to those. So if you'll be just kind of watching your email, I'll tell those of you who need to be watching: John, Non, Mike, Chris, Andy, Rich, Kathy, Linda. I think that's it. You'll be breaking out into one group. Oh, Anita, you're in that group.
Yes.
So you'll be breaking out into one group, and then the rest of the group will just stay here. And then when we get done the breakout session, we'll bring everybody back together. So the one group of you that's having to leave, just don't lose your place of where we are tonight, because you're going to have to leave this one and come back to it.
Steve, if I can interrupt.
Yeah.
If you do mute yourself, you're not going to be able to unmute yourself. So if you for whatever reason do have to mute yourself, if you physically raise your hands, the host will be able to unmute you. Like Suzanne's doing right now. Good example, Suzanne.
So, all right. So
Okay.
that's that. The next thing, just want to make sure that during the breakout sessions, again, we'll do it through raising your hands. And what we're hoping is that all participants that are here will have an equal voice in the process, and we'll be taking that into the case, but understanding that in the end of the day, when we go to pass this, the board has the final say, and we understand that. So, you know, the board will have the final say when we pass the document, but for these sessions, we're trying to work together as a team and do that. So the other thing that just as a thought process that we've had is, because of COVID and all of this, we're actually about 4 months behind on this, what we had hoped to be, or at least 3 months behind. And so our recommendation, and coming from the strategic plan group and mine, would be that as we think about this, we're planning for 21 through 25 for the 5 years. And so that way, as we're moving forward, we just kind of think about what that is. So as we move into this time of goal setting and thinking about this, you know, we may get some things done in 20, but the real goals process will be for 21 through 25. And part of that's obviously because of where we are. We put a lot of things on hold financially this year. And so this will just give us a spot that we can really look and lay the foundation between now and the end of the year. It will help us budget. It will help us set the direction that we're going to go with the budget. And so we'll do all of that. So just be thinking about that as we go through the process. And Anita, if you want to talk real quickly. Before I do that, when we break out, John Agar and Anita will be the two that will be leading the two groups. Well, one will be each leading a group, not they're both leading the same group, but they're going to be each leading a group through this process. And so I make sure everybody remembers that Anita was the chair of the strategic plan committee and John was the vice chair. So they're helping us lead through that process. And I'm very thankful for that. And so Anita, if you would just go ahead and talk about the vision that you had, that the group had, the key facts and the analysis that you came up with, and then we'll jump back and talk about the rest of how tonight's going to go.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Some of you may remember from reading the strategic plan document that the Strategic Plan Advisory Committee put together, that in the end, the vision for the township is that Newtown Township is a place where people who live here don't want to move from it, and those who do not live here want to move to it. In a nutshell, that is what the bottom line was of looking forward to a vision for the township. And there's some facts just to remind us of what all's gone into putting the strategic plan together. Some key facts are that there are 10 of the Strategic Plan Advisory Committee members. We had 4 public workshops. We did outreach to 74 stakeholder groups. We sent out 7,100 questionnaires, mailed them to residents and businesses, and over 1,500 responded. That's a 21% response rate, which is a huge number of people responding and giving us their thoughts. As far as the analysis, there was a good spread of those in the township who've been here less than 20 years and those who've been here longer. And so we're here before the growth spurt that some of the ones who've only been here 20 years have witnessed. Also, there's a good spread through all the precincts. All were well represented. The directives that you see in the strategic plan were based upon the highest percent of those who agree or strongly agree with the topics, with the directives. And finally, we captured comments and shared those by directive, which were in the back of the strategic plan that you received. And those are actual comments from our residents who took the time to write and tell us what they thought. So Steve, that's a summary of our facts and analysis.
Thank you. So tonight we are going to, in a few moments, we're going to spend a little bit of time just talking about the outcomes related to the first directive, and that first directive is ease traffic congestion. So we'll be talking about that specifically tonight, and we'll be trying to set goals around the outcomes that we felt were important. So when we do that, we'll break out. We'll have about an hour and 10 minutes. Rich and I are going to be hosting the 2 meetings and kind of tracking time. And like I said, Anita and John will be leading those sessions. And then Kathy and Bill will be actually putting up on the screen in each room some of the ideas that people are coming up with, so that we can kind of keep track of those. And then we'll all come back together and look at what everybody's come up with in that process. Again, that's how we're going to kind of run this. We're going to take a few minutes now. Well, let me jump ahead one other thing. So when we get into this process, one of the things we're going to do is set goals. And so as we think about setting goals, a couple things that I would like to bring to everyone's attention in the focus. One is that it's for the next 5 years. And so, and the idea is that the goals would build on one another to try to accomplish the outcome that we're looking to accomplish. And so we need to think in terms of steps that we need to take in these goals to make sure that we get to the outcome that we're looking for. And then finally, when we think about goals, what does that look like? And I hope that most of you have heard of the concept of SMART goals. And so we want the goals to be specific. We want the goals to be measurable. We want them to be attainable. We want them to be relevant, and we want them to be time bound. And so that'll be one of the things we're looking at. And then tonight, you know, because it's a relatively short period of time that we're looking at for three very specific, tough outcomes as I see it, you know, if the goals don't get fully fleshed out to all those, we'll take that back through the staff and we'll flesh them the rest of the way out and then bring them back so that the group can see them as a whole. So that's kind of the process. But again, we'll remember that we want the goals to be really specific of what we're trying to achieve, measurable, that we can figure out what it is that we're trying to accomplish and we know whether we got there or not. Attainable, obviously, if, you know, we might want something, but if we can't do it, that probably doesn't make sense to set a goal around it. And then, of course, we want them to be relevant to what we're talking about, and we want them to be time measurable, that we can, or time bound, so that we can figure out where they will be. We understand when we look at a couple of the outcomes and related to Directive 1, so I would bring your attention, we sent a packet out to everyone. For those of you who are in as the public, you could go to the township website. Under on the front page of the township website, there's the logo for the strategic plan. You could click on that, or you could go under government tab, drop that down, look under the strategic plan, click on the strategic plan advisory committee, and it would take you to that page if you want to see specifically what it is that we're talking about in related to the plan. So on page 13, we looked at the idea of easing traffic congestion because it came up as #1. It was the one thing that had the most responses, the most people felt strongly about or agreed to that was a problem within the township. And we all are kind of aware of that. There's nobody here that's not aware of that, I'm sure. And so there were 3 outcomes that came out of that. And the 3 outcomes, one was speeding in the neighborhoods would be greatly reduced. Traffic congestion and flow are significantly improved, and roads are in good repair. And so those are the 3 outcomes that we want to try to move towards over the next 5 years or be able to accomplish. And we know that some of these are probably bigger than happen in just a 5-year period. But then what groundwork are we laying to moving towards those accomplishments so that people would feel like we're making progress in that area? Then if you look down at the bottom of that page, there were some recommended initiatives that came out from some of the comments that people suggested. And so I'm going to ask Anita again to take us through the questionnaire comments that were made related to easing traffic. And so for those of you with your books, you can look on page 34, 35, 36, and I think 37 at the top. And for this purpose tonight, you may want to open up the packet that I sent you, or we sent you, and pull those pages out, because those are really the 4 pages that we're going to be dealing with, or 5 pages, the page 13, and then the 34 through 37. But Anita, if you would take us through those comments and help us kind of understand what the public was saying related to the outcomes that we came up with.
Sure, Steve, I'd be glad to. So when you look at the questions or the comments that are in the back, there are some key themes that came through. And I'll just briefly mention some of the things that showed up in there. One of them was a traffic study, and they particularly talked about a traffic study they had seen that was done at Route 1 and 252, and the fact that that helped them get a much better flow of traffic through there. The enlarged or alternate bypass for Route 252 and Route 3 traffic, that was another area that they focused on. Various suggestions between widening, considering a bypass, underpass, overpass, completing the Bryn Mawr extension. So that idea. Then there was police presence and action against aggressive drivers. And the idea is to have more police presence during busy times and at busy intersections where drivers routinely block the box. It was the feeling that that might help. Then there's improve the number and timing of lights and signage. And there were quite a number of items that went along with that one. But the whole idea is looking at the traffic flow and determining whether some of that could be alleviated by some different timing of lights and that type of thing. And the signage, no turn on red idea. And then there was speed controls on key roads, speed bumps, or some way to control excessive speed, reducing speed, that type of thing. And then one on discouraging traffic cut through in neighborhoods. And you'll see in here quite a long list of suggestions in this particular area that cover not only discouraging traffic cut through in neighborhoods, but further suggestions about improving some of the signs for turns and discouraging cut through certainly in certain neighborhoods, and mentioning some of the traffic problems that the public sees. And then finally, fix the streets with proper paving. And they took the time to name a number of specific streets that they thought needed some attention. So those were some of the main areas. And when you look through the comments in this whole section here, you will see this by far was the longest list of comments. So Steve, back to you.
All right, so that's kind of an overview of what we're going to be looking at tonight. Before we break into breakout groups, does anybody have any questions? All right, so I'm going to read off the list again of the folks who are going to go join the other meeting. If you're here with the public and you want to watch the other group that's leaving, Suzanne has posted that meeting on the website. You can go join it, and you're welcome to come back to this one, however you want to go. Rich and I will be watching to make sure anybody that goes out can get back in and all of those kind of good things. So again, those that are leaving will be Anita, John Naun, Mike Russo, Chris, Andy, Rich, Kathy, and Linda. You will be, I sent you an email. Did everybody get the email that I sent that I just read off?
Yes.
Yes.
Steve, mine says agenda. Is that the one I should have?
The breakout, the one that says breakout room, Anita. I just sent you a link. I just sent you a email link.
Email link, okay.
Do you see it?
Not yet. I just have one that says, it says breakout room, yes. Is that
That's it. Yes.
And then it has on there confidential final and a number of things, and then open final. There are two
Just
of them.
open final. There's no confidential. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So if I click anywhere on that one, it should take me to
To
the.
let you in.
That's
Rich,
going
why
to
don't you go get that meeting started?
All right, so I'm gonna jump out of this one and then I will get the other meeting started.
Yes,
take,
please.
Anita, the log on information's at the top or the breakout room. Do you see it?
Open final, the top line there just says Board of Supervisors workshop breakout room.
Yes. And underneath there, there's all the Zoom information.
I don't see the Zoom information on this.
Well, let me see. Should be there. Go in through the website because I'm looking right at it.
So we
Go to the website, the township website,
Okay,
and then go down to the bubble for meetings and agendas. You don't need to sign in.
okay.
Anita, I just sent it to you again as well.
Okay,
Does anyone else need it?
so we can just leave this meeting and go
You
to
can
the
go ahead
next.
and leave and get moved over. Rich will start letting you in.
Very good.
You see it, Anita?
okay, so I just saw one come in, Stephen, so that would be the one now?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right,
And if you click on that, it should ask you if you want to leave this one, and you would
Yes.
say yes, and then you would join that one.
okay. Want to leave? Yes.
Bye.
Chris, did you get an email?
Yeah, I'm trying to get there.
Oh, okay.
My internet connection is unstable.
You're breaking up.
Do you want to?
There he's
He
gone.
just left. I was gonna say, does he want to stay? I'd move around a little bit. All right. So George, if you don't mind, I'm going to make you a co-host just in case I have to go to the other meeting room.
He's muted.
He's muted, but he understands that. Okay. And he understood. He knew what I was saying. I could tell.
He was following the rules, raising his hand.
All right.
Looks like Sonia and Leonard are still muted.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Bill.
Oh, yeah.
And Bill.
Sonia's good, Bill's good. Gang's all here.
I'm here.
Okay. All right. So John.
Yep.
I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for participating in this. And of course, the Strategic Plan Advisory Committee members, we've been together for how long now? 2 years? So we know each other pretty well. So if you turn to page 13, I think that's where we're going to use that as our reference. If you have that open, please.
No anymore.
And I'll describe what our goal is. So at the top of the page, you see Directive 1, ease traffic congestion. That is the directive which was identified by the huge number of people, stakeholders in the township. Then there are 3 outcomes which we hope to achieve to ease traffic congestion. And do you see those? The speeding in neighborhoods is greatly reduced, traffic congestion and flow are significantly improved, roads are in good repair. So what we need to do tonight, and I'll talk about the process in a second, is for each of these outcomes, come up with goals as to how we will achieve them during the next 5 years. We want to do this as a consent. We don't want to vote. We want to all come to an agreement, and I think we can. It happened all the time at our meetings. We just talk this through until we come to consensus. We have about 20 minutes for each of these. When you want to speak, if you can just raise your hand, because it's Zoom and it's a pain in the neck to, to handle this. So if you can raise your hand, I'll acknowledge you, allow you to speak. Again, we have 5 years, 2021 through 2025. So when we work on the goals for each of these outcomes, we're going to look at in terms of the next 5 years. We want to do this in a way that it's stepwise. What do we need to do first? What do we need to do second? How do we achieve this? It's not just, we know what we want to do. Speeding neighborhoods is greatly reduced for the purpose of easing traffic congestion. But now we want to know how we're going to do it. What do we need to do first, second, third during the next 5 years? We want to know who will do it. We want to have a timeline, as I said, and we want this to be measurable. How will we know we're there? We want to make sure we don't want to just have a bunch of goals and then say we did it. We want to have some guidelines. It could be quantitative, it could be qualitative, but we have to come up with a way to show that we've achieved the outcomes. Any questions?
Nope.
Okay, so Bill, you will put a Word document up.
I'm typing away.
Can we see it?
Oh, you want screen share?
Yeah, if you'll do screen share, Bill.
And
Well,
Sonia's checking up on you.
I'm glad she is.
Well, we don't want to spend 2.5 hours and lose it because of a.
Everybody see it?
Yep.
It's small.
Very small.
Can you make it large?
Bill?
Make it full screen? There you go. Oh,
But we have to see each other too, so there's a.
You should be on the right. I can see everybody on the right-hand side.
yeah.
Can you go to a single page view, Bill? That might help increase the size of it a little bit.
Where is that?
Maybe at the bottom. There you go.
How about that?
Better.
That better?
Oops.
I'm just, go to the next page.
Can you make it then full screen?
Well, let's see.
And
How about that?
then just zoom in on that. You should be able to zoom in on the document at the bottom right. Should be a plus minus.
There's a little, there you go, on the,
Yeah,
there you
I
go.
found it. Wait a minute.
You still might have that double page. There you go. View.
Holy
How
cow.
about that?
Oh, good.
That's better.
Okay.
I'm trying to get it so I can see everybody here.
I don't want to lose it.
See if I can. I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 of us. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I can see everyone. All right, so we're ready to begin with the first outcome, which is speeding in the neighborhoods is greatly reduced. So we want to come up with who needs to work on this, and how do we achieve it in the next 5 years, and how will we know we achieved it?
I'm getting a page view, but I'm not able to type.
I think Walt was raising his hand. And then so is Sonia.
Go ahead, Walt.
Again, this is a little bit of the cart in front of the horse, but one of the ways that speeding in the neighborhood can be monitored is, I know the police department has one portable speed radar that, I'm sure everybody's seen it, where you put it up and it says your speed is, X miles an hour. That also records statistical data. And by maybe obtaining several more of them so that it's not just one neighborhood or one road at a time, they could be put in various locations to monitor the traffic. And I think if we talk with Chris Lund, he'll tell you that it gives you a graph or data showing what the average speed is, times of day, things like that. That's something that's quantitative that could be used to measure the outcome in the end.
Sonia?
I don't want to jump ahead, but if we're talking about speeding in the neighborhoods, other than using anything but speed limit signs, like if we're talking about traffic circles or speed bumps or something of that nature, then I think that should be timed with repairing the roads, because you're not going to want to put in a speed bump and then have to take it down to repair the road. So I think they might have to go a little bit hand in hand if we go in that direction. And I did like a couple of the comments in Appendix 8, which suggested closing down some roads or making them one-way during certain times of the day to help reduce some of the cut-throughs.
J-A-non. All right, let me talk to him. I'll call you back. Bye.
Leonard has his hand raised.
Sonia, are you finished?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So one thing that I tend to encounter a lot with residents when they start talking to me about speeding in the different neighborhoods and the roads is a lot of them are not aware that we do have that traffic calming policy. And so like when I bring that information to them, that it's all on the website and that there's a policy, that there's a procedure that, that they have to follow essentially to get the speed bump in on their street. They're sort of, amazed at the fact that we've had it for, such a long period of time. They just didn't know anything about it. So I think, one of the things that we could talk about is, because we need to go through certain hurdles as people in the township know, we can't just put the speed bumps in. And so this policy kind of crosses those T's and dots those I's. So I think that in addition to figuring out the solution, we also need to do a little bit of education to let people know that there is a policy out there. This is what you have to do for the township to be able to put a speed bump in there. Because I think we all acknowledge, obviously, just being the number one, that speeding through a lot of these neighborhoods is a major issue. I mean, you're talking to a kid who grew up, or a guy, I should say, a guy who grew up on a cut-through lane, on Valley View Lane.
Before we forget, is becoming clear who should be responsible for this, or what group of people should be responsible for this outcome?
Well, I think if you're going to follow the policy that Leonard just referenced, the residents have to sign a petition that has to be submitted to the police. And then they would take it from there.
So you can't have traffic calming without the residents asking for it?
Typically, that's the way we do it, but if there's enough complaints, Steve, can we set something up without the petition? I thought the petition's required.
George is raising his hand.
Oh,
Yeah, so a good question. The way the policy is written is that it originates with the residents that are going to be requesting the traffic calming, and as a byproduct are affected then by that traffic calming. Because there's positives that it has the potential of slowing traffic down, but then they have to deal with that the traffic in their area is slowed down. They could have noise, etc. That does not take away the Board of Supervisors' ability to implement traffic calming where they determine that it's necessary. And one example was back a few years ago, we did put speed humps at Brookside Park in that area along Brookside Road. And there were no residents that were right there to request it, but it was known to be a problem, and the board made the decision to put traffic calming there. So it is kind of, there are two avenues for it right now.
Is there a group that should be the overarching custodians of this outcome? I mean, we can just say, well, wait till people sign a petition, and that's not, I mean, I don't think that's the way to go. Should someone go out there and ask who should be in charge of this outcome?
Well, I think as we start talking about how we're going to get to the outcome, how we're going to achieve it, we may determine who's going to be responsible.
Okay.
Because each area may have a different person or a different group of people being responsible.
Okay.
You know, one thought that I know came up from the strategic plan group was, do we create a committee that focus? I mean, if this is such a big issue, do we create a committee that focuses on this? And not that we need more committees, but if this is, I think it was 97% of the people said that this was an issue. Does it deserve the kind of emphasis that's beyond just staff or the board looking at this, but that we've got a group that's actually trying to help address this? And I saw Sonia raised her hand.
So I understand about not creating additional committees, but I do think that this goes throughout the entire township, and it's going to be not only traffic control, but it's going to be road repair. It's going to be utilities digging up the roads to put in new pipes and stuff. So, and PennDOT, whatever PennDOT does. So I really do think this might need a committee that's going to be working on this over the next 5 years and planning it so that we don't lay down a new road and then Aqua comes in and says, we've got to dig this up and put in new pipes. Because that's happened. My road hasn't been paved in a long time, but it's been, tarred, and new stones have come through and they've made the road look nice. But then Aqua comes in the next year and now half the road's torn up and the other half is the way it was. So I think there's a lot of balls up in the air with this, because you've got to have somebody talking to PennDOT, talking to the utilities, talking to Public Works, and even the police to figure it out, so that we're not taking one step forward and then falling back 2 steps.
Time
Tina
has
has her hand raised.
time has been moving here. What should we need to start looking at? What should be done first, second, third? What should we do first?
Did they list roads that they felt when they were complaining about the speeding, were specific roads listed?
So, Tina, you had your hand up. Did you have?
I was just, to Sonia's point, I believe that Public Works, George, I mean, utilities have to tell the township when they're coming in, correct? And we cannot, can we stop them? Or, I mean, I think there are things in place that everyone's got to kind of understand how this all works. Like, they just don't decide to come in and dig up the street.
Correct. So first of all, when we're going to do road work, especially like a road program like we're doing this year, the utilities are all notified well in advance, so that if they have a known reason to go under the road, they could get it done before we do the work. That being said, I'll give you an example from just this afternoon. We're getting ready to do the southern portion of Ellis Avenue, the 800 block of Ellis Avenue. And a resident called me this afternoon because she wants to put an emergency generator in. PECO needs to put a larger gas pipe in. And PECO said, oh, well, the township is days away from redoing that road, so we might not be able to get it done quickly enough. Again, we get to the point where either Aqua has a break and they need to fix something, or a resident is looking to do something to their house that they need to get in. And we have to balance that against cutting open a road we don't want to and denying the service or the repair that might be necessary. And there's no right answer for it. We can tell them, no, you can't go in. But if the water main breaks,
Yeah.
what are you gonna do? You have to go in. You know, we put restrictions on it, and we try to say, if you're going to do this, this is the result. But again, if there's an emergency, they need to be able to get in and do that.
And we do have a road program that we've had in place. How long now, Stephen? That that Public Works and
I think it was put into place in 2013 timeframe, George.
Yeah, so in 2012, 2013, a road condition evaluation was done. And then using that document, we started with the road program in 13.
We have a number of ideas here, but what should we, Walt, go ahead.
Just a quick question, George. Typically, what kind of time frame do the utilities notify? Like, for example, if Aqua is going to be doing infrastructure improvements?
Sure. So Aqua and PECO, as a general rule, if there's a major project they have on the docket, we usually get, I would say, about a year's notice.
Okay.
You know, sometimes it could be shorter, especially if there's a break or an emergency. But as a general rule, they try to lay out well ahead of time what their major projects are going to be. Emergencies are the challenge. That could be a day's notice.
Sure.
We have a number of ideas here with speed humps, the radar, asking residents, but what should be done first? What's the first thing we should do to move towards achieving this? Sonia?
I think an easy solution right now is to make sure all the stop signs are visible, or if they need to be placed on both sides of the road, if something might be covering up, making sure that the speed limit signs are visible. And if we can get the police out during those rush hours and on the busy streets to kind of monitor, make sure people are not blocking the box and so forth. That, I think, would be something we can do immediately. And then the traffic congestion generally and the roads, like I said, I really think it needs to have a committee that's going to monitor that for 5 years and work with the different entities and including like SEPTA, you know, to fix these roads.
George?
So focusing, I guess, initially on the speeding in the neighborhoods, to Leonard's point about the traffic calming policy, I think a first move would really be education and helping everybody in the community to understand not just the policy, but the policy as part of it has history and has rationale behind it.
Right.
And I think if people understood the parameters for how we look at it and how they should look at it, then we've got a baseline. And then from that point, people can start, and we can start evaluating where methods might be needed to address speeding.
So the first step seems pretty simple. Make sure all the signs are visible and in the proper places. And then also you're suggesting, Sonia, that the police have a presence.
Yeah, I mean, if they have the manpower to do it, I mean, blocking the box is a big problem at 252 and Westchester Pike.
Yes.
You know, and sometimes just having somebody, a cop car in the parking lot with a cop standing outside can be enough to make people not to block those boxes.
So you're talking about congestion, not the speeding.
Well, but you know, people try to beat the light, or
Oh, okay.
you know, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Anything else?
Leonard, you had your hand up?
Yeah, it's, to Sonia's point, where she said, making sure stop signs are more visible, speed limits signs are visible. I don't know if this is something that we want to add on there too, but, and I'm just thinking, is there a need for us to have more stop signs? Are there intersections in the township that, for whatever reason, are just not, you know, they don't have a stop sign in there? You know, it's obviously, all of these are going to be difficult to enforce unless you have a police officer out there all the time, which we all know isn't going to be feasible. But, you know, the speed bumps, you're slowing down or you're bottoming out, right? But the lengthy process that one needs to go through for that, in addition to the cost incurred, you know, is stop sign the quick, you know, intermediary fix before the speed bumps start getting placed around into some of these roads. So, you know, just wrapping that up, because I know it was long-winded, is there a need for more stop signs in some of these intersections and streets?
Who would do that?
I would defer to Mr. Sharretts on this.
Sure. So whenever a stop sign is warranted, there is a study that's done, and then that study is presented to the board, and the board would vote, and it would be actually done by ordinance, I believe.
Correct.
Now, George, is that sorry, Tina, is that started by residents as well, or can the board just decide to say, hey, you know, we need to have a stop sign at Tennis Avenue and Locust?
Sure, I believe it could be done either way.
Typically, though, we do require the study just to make sure that we're not, there are some limitations, like you're not supposed to use stop signs to create traffic calming. Stop signs are to be used to protect intersections is the intent.
Tina?
I just had a comment about the stop signs. I think what another immediate quick help, I think, or an aid is at a stop sign to have the line painted at the stop sign, because it's a visual when you approach the stop sign. You see the stop sign, but if you see the you know, a white marking, you know, okay, this is it's kind of it's a secondary visual to stop. So I think that may help, because people tend to roll through stop signs. So I think if you've got the white line, it would help to delineate and maybe encourage people to stop for a longer period. Or I've seen signs on stop signs that say rolling stops, you know, a full stop is free, but a rolling stop is $180 or something.
Haverford Township.
Yeah, it's kind of gimmicky, but at least it catches your attention and say, oh, it's a stop sign. Just a thought, just to help enhance the psychology of stopping.
Just for the group, we have roughly 45 minutes.
Okay.
I can tell you in my neighborhood, there are 2 stop signs in front of my house, and I am at a lower point. Both sides, both parts of the road come down to where my house is. That stop sign is merely a suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
No one pays any mind. A few years ago, my neighbor's child was almost hit. So I really struggle with that here. We've put it in our neighborhood newsletter, sent out numerous emails. I really wish we could figure it out because I am just so afraid one of these days it's going to end in tragedy. And I don't know what would work.
We just have a few minutes and we're going to have to report back to the other group. So what are our suggestions to address speeding in neighborhoods so that speeding in neighborhoods is greatly reduced? What's the first thing we do? What's the order? What can we do first and achieve and at least get the process moving?
I mean,
just so we all agree here.
One thought that I've wondered, would it benefit us to spend a little bit of time as a township and like really sit down at the map and look at neighborhoods and divide the neighborhoods up and then evaluate and set a priority in evaluating each neighborhood? Because if we look at all the neighborhoods, we're probably not going to get any done. If we look at priorities across neighborhoods based on where we have the most complaints over the last 5 years,
Yeah.
we could probably start a process and start making headway. Even though it wouldn't address everybody's situation, we would start putting together where we've had the most complaints or where we know there's the most issues.
The most immediate needs, the areas that have the most immediate needs. I think that's a great start.
And who would do this?
Well, I think if we go back to the concept of the committee, maybe the committee then makes that first step, and then we would put the committee together first if we think that's the right decision. And then the next step would be to go ahead and really break the township up into, maybe it's 15 neighborhoods, 20 neighborhoods, whatever that right piece is. And then from that, evaluate where we've had the most complaints over the last 5 years. That would be more of a staff responsibility to take back to the committee. And then you would have a basis to start, because each neighborhood may have a different approach of how you would handle what needs to be addressed.
Whether it's speed humps or additional signs or lines in the street or perhaps a police presence. Yes, George.
So along with that, again, we do have a traffic calming policy, which is probably about 5 years old. A lot of effort went into developing it, but at the same point, one, a lot of people don't know about it. And two, it's probably time to look at it for potentially revising it. And I know that when it was developed, it's rather wordy. It may be very easy to pare it down and really get to the meat of it. And that could be something that the committee would have a part of if there was going to be a traffic committee. But again, I would get back to that. There is a policy and I recommend that we educate people about it and educate ourselves about it and see if it needs to be revised after 5 years.
Well,
once, if the committee's formed, the other thing that we could do is to determine, again, as it was said, what are the key neighborhoods where, the major amount of complaints are. And the committee could perhaps canvass the residents of that neighborhood, either by mail or in person, offer them some suggestions. Would you like speed humps? Would you like your road to be one way between, 7 and 10 or whatever? and then ask for suggestions from the neighborhood. And that might start them on the process of, yeah, we want the speed hump. What do we have to, let's get the paperwork going.
Everyone satisfied with what we have?
Yeah, is this, you can see a step one, then a step two, which I'm kind of making up on the fly here.
Just to let everyone know, that traffic calming policy is on the website. It's under the administrative link, and then there's a legislative tab, and it's the very first policy under that.
And it's very easy to follow, but it is sort of lengthy. And I think that it turns residents off for that. But number two, and again, going back to the education, I just don't think a lot of residents know that we have a policy that they can go through to do this. And when they reach out and I tell them that, they're so appreciative of it. But then I feel like they kind of get a little scared because, we do as a township have T's to cross and I's to dot. But I think that if there is a committee that essentially brings this service to them, that, maybe that'll be the lightning rod to help them out a little bit more.
Bill, I think on step one, I think establish a traffic committee, then determine neighborhoods, and then go from there. Remember, divide the township up in the neighborhoods.
Let's see.
And then evaluate each of the neighborhoods.
Okay.
I think that's what.
Establish a traffic committee, then canvass the neighborhoods, or do what next?
No, divide the township into neighborhoods.
Oh, okay. All right. Gotcha.
So I think that's what I heard.
Yes.
And then evaluate each of the neighborhoods and find out where the biggest problems are, and then find solutions. And then you have some of the solutions in step two. To determine the ones with the biggest problem, I think.
Oh, got it already. Okay.
I see. Look good?
I can't see it.
Still can't see it?
Oh, I have old eyes. That's okay. Don't worry.
So from the public's point of view, they would see that something has happened. The committee is being formed. That's the township and the neighborhood, evaluating the neighborhoods, determining where the greatest needs are, and then coming up with solutions. And then some of the easier things are make sure the stop signs, the speed limits are there, perhaps put lines to show that that's where you stop, and then perhaps if we have enough police, have a police presence at some of the critical locations, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Good.
Sonia has her hand up.
Sonia. I keep looking at the paper, reading the words. I need a bell or something.
I was just going to say, do we need to divide up the neighborhoods and evaluate them to just confirm that the stop signs are visible and paint a line just to emphasize where the stop sign is? I mean, if that's an easy fix, that we don't need any kind of complaint from the neighbors or from the citizens of Newtown Square or any kind of board of supervisor approval, it would just be something, sorry, George, Public Works could get out doing right away, then I would think that might be the better first step, because then we can say we've hit the ground running. And then it gives the committee a little bit more time to start dividing up the townships and dividing the township and evaluating the needs of each individual neighborhood.
As long as step one is form the committee, and then maybe the committee could do that as their first action.
Well, I guess
someone needs to start. Suzanne?
One other suggestion I would have is one of the Eagle Scouts project in our neighborhood is they have that reflective strip that goes from the actual sign down the length of the post. I think that's also helpful. It makes it much more visible.
Especially at night.
Yeah, right. I don't know what costs would be associated with that, but I know at night it makes a big difference.
So add reflective,
Walter.
I put it under step 2, kind of actions that the committee, more tactical things.
Well,
The other possibility, another thing that might help with the stop signs, again, depending on the neighborhood, is actually paint the word stop behind the white line. You see that in a lot of places also.
okay, so the point where you do stop with the word stop painted there in the street. All right. Go on the traffic congestion.
Okay.
Is that a hand, Leonard?
Oh, no, it's not. Sorry.
Like I said, I start reading and thinking, I'm not looking at hands.
Well, it's Tina, I'm sorry.
Yes,
I just have a suggestion that maybe Stephen can kind of bring us up to speed, because I know that with the timing of the lights, it's under Equus is development plan. They are working on Route 3, and I believe the timing of the lights is also part of that. Am I correct, Stephen? It's 3 and 252 that the light, there's a timing that they've
actually, I'm sorry. Actually, the timing is going to be all the way from the blue route back this way. I think it goes all the way to the SAP light eventually. Right now, it would go to the, is it the Charles Ellis Drive light? Is that right, George?
It is, yes.
And that's actually a PennDOT issue. And this is where I think under the initiatives, we were looking at this idea of, do we get more involved with PennDOT? Do we have we had, I think, talked in the strategic plan meeting, our group, that, does the township have a regular meeting with PennDOT? And, whether it's once every 6 months or once every year or once every 4 months, depending on what's going on. And, maybe in the beginning it's once every 4 months. And then as we find that it's going better, we extend it. But, and then, the question that I would have is, does this committee that we're looking at for the neighborhoods does that same committee potentially look at this issue and work with us in trying to have, I don't know that you want to take a whole committee to meet with PennDOT. That doesn't work very well, but at least come up with the topics that we're trying to discuss with PennDOT, even if the staff is carrying it out.
I think, Bill, it says, does the speeding committee have ownership for this? The speeding is the first outcome.
Okay, so this is step 1 is not traffic committee, it's speeding committee.
Yeah, it was step 1 of the speeding outcome. Yeah. So
Okay.
does the speeding committee have ownership for this outcome also?
I think that would probably be a very good idea, because a lot of the neighborhoods are near state roads anyway. And to build that relationship to cross a couple umbrellas, I think would be a great idea.
And I think that the neighborhoods that are mostly affected by the more traffic and the speeding are the neighborhoods who are directly adjacent to 252 and Westchester Pike, as they are acting as cut through. So I think they're, as Suzanne said, all under the same umbrella. So I think, and PennDOT, as any group responds if you've got a relationship with them, as opposed to just coming with pitchforks after them if you can work together with PennDOT. I've found that, and John Non will tell you as well, is if you've got a relationship with PennDOT, they're reasonable people. And I think if it's if it's collaborative, everybody wants to be collaborative. So I think that's a great idea. And I think that this committee can work on that as well.
And especially there'll be residents, so
Yeah.
that may even have a greater impact.
Just a couple thoughts in regards to this. You know, one of the things is we've looked about this in traffic congestion, and we've talked about the concept, you know, came up with this idea of bypasses and expanding 252. And there's some real challenges to be able to do that, to widen 252. There, you know, there's some spots where I'm not even sure it's possible. And even if it is possible, the other challenge is, do we just move the traffic out of Newtown or further down in Newtown? In one level, you don't care, I guess, if it's out of Newtown, but you know, PennDOT's going to look at it as a whole road, not just what's happening within the, you know, 3 miles that are within Newtown. But you know, we've talked about a couple things like the bypass, like the Bryn Mawr bypass. Is that something that we want to explore more? Do we think that's important? Do we want to have conversations about just widening 252 with PennDOT? Are those some things that should be on the goals that we think are important?
Bryn Mawr Avenue bypass.
Sonia?
I think everything should be on the table. We can't really make any of these decisions without getting PennDOT's input and the surrounding townships. So I think everything's on the table, and it's going to have to be a collective analysis really throughout Delaware County and part of Chester County to figure out how we're going to reduce some of the congestion on some of these roads that cut through everybody's town.
Right, and that's why it's important to have a relationship with PennDOT with that, because they can help if there's another development, because Edgemont's got a slate of 300 houses coming online at the old golf course. Where do those 600 cars go through? Potentially, they go through Newtown Square. So I think everyone also has to understand it's not just our developments that cause a lot of this traffic or this congestion. It is the surrounding communities. So I think having a relationship with PennDOT will help with that as well, because, you know, then, you know, if someone comes in, I think it's important. I think the PennDOT thing is very critical, because we are at their, you know, we've got two of their major thoroughfares through the county. We bisect, you know, where 252 and Route 3 meet. You're at the major crossroads of Delaware County. So I think it's important. I think it's also important to have a relationship with the county. I don't know what does the county, do they have a traffic, or is it through the Planning Commission?
I think most of it's in the Planning Commission, but they may have something traffic wise. I don't know.
And you do, and Stephen, you're on that Westchester Pike Coalition.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm also in the DCT.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
The first paragraph clearly is on light timing. Is the second one really about widening all the state roads? Is that what we're talking about? Not just 252, but also, well, they're talking, is Route 3 being widened to 3 lanes through Newtown Square?
Yeah, well, at least in part of it.
Yeah. It's going to be in phases, Steve, right?
Well, they're doing what would be the last, there's 2 phases left of the widening.
Right.
I mean, you could say there's 3 because they're going to add on to what they're doing now on both ends, but they're going to do it at one time.
I think that, I'm sorry, John.
Is that why the trees are down in the median strip?
Yeah, that's why.
They took them down, yeah.
Leonard?
To kind of piggyback off of what Sonia and Tina both said, I mean, I think that one of the biggest things that you'll see in any traffic study that they do around these townships is that we're continuously referred to as a crossroads community. And I think that Tina put it perfectly where she said, we are in the major, we're in the crosshairs of two major thoroughfares for the county and arguably for this region. I agree to an extent that we need to put everything on the table, but at the same time, right, from a practical standpoint, what you're going to have, I mean, one of the things it says that it says here is talking about more four-way stops, and that's exactly what we're trying to do here with one of the projects, and it just seems that everybody understands they want traffic congestion resolved, but when you have proposals to do it, and if it causes what they will perceive as any traffic coming onto their roads, they're the first ones to obstruct it. So I think that, again, to bring it back down to education, it's looking at the holistic picture, getting out of that individuality and looking at the collective, what's collectively good for the entire township. Because I can tell you right now, that Bryn Mawr Avenue extension, I lived over in the second precinct where that was discussed. Townships have had that easement for 30, 40 years. Delaware County Regional Planning Commission has consistently put it on their list as things that they want to have done. And those Terraza people, the Terraza residents, every time I have an opportunity to talk to them, bring it up. I mean, they're ready to fight that tooth and nail. So yeah, it might alleviate some traffic on 252 and Westchester Pike, but then you're dumping it onto Springton Point, and then potentially Bishop Hollow. But again, I think maybe, the overall education of that would help alleviate it. But you're going to get, this is the beautiful thing about local government. I mean that in all sincerity, is that it's difficult. It's a NIMBY argument, not my backyard. Do it somewhere else and fix the problem.
Right.
Sonia?
So I totally respect that. I can understand that nobody wants a bypass or cut through created in their neighborhood, but going back to what Tina's saying, these relationships are going to be really critical. Why do we have this congestion? Is it because it's coming off of 476? Is it because there's more increase in congestion on Montgomery Avenue and Lancaster Avenue coming through Montgomery County into Delaware County? So with these relationships, can we start alleviating some of these other congestions outside of Newtown Square that will then have the ripple effect and create less traffic within Newtown Square?
Yeah, I'm all for fixing the issues in the other municipalities in their neighborhoods. No, I'm just kidding.
I just mean to say, if we can't, I think it's a mistake to just look at Newtown Square. I think we have to create these relationships and have sincere discussions with the surrounding townships, because they're having the same problems too. So if we can come up collectively with solutions that could benefit the entire county, then that is really what we need, because we can fix, the break in the line down here, but if it's all broken up there, it's not going to make a difference.
Yep.
There's something we need to go to the county for, or to the state, or do we just start trying to do our own relationships with other municipalities?
Might have strength in numbers. If we join all municipalities together, our voice might be somewhat louder and maybe get more attention.
Going back to your comment, John, some things are done, like the Westchester Pike Coalition is actually a group that's 5 or 6 Chester County municipalities and 5 Delaware County municipalities. And in addition to some other folks, SEPTA's on it and some others like that. And we're tackling from the 69th Street station all the way out to Westchester, looking at it as a whole and what one community's doing and how it impacts the other communities up and downstream from that. We could create a similar thing on 252, looking, at least from, you probably look from 202 down to at least Route 1 or even beyond, because those are where the big issues are.
Do we also, and I don't know if this, I personally don't think this is out of the realm, right? Because we're speaking of traffic congestion. do we also want to look at public transportation, advocating for the use of public transportation, having, bus shelters that are, legitimate bus shelters, not a bench that someone's being subjected to the weather all 4 seasons. Is that an opportunity to, foster that relationship with SEPTA? I know that when I worked for SEPTA, they have a government relations team. I think Suzanne knows that the deputy director of the government relations team pretty well, as a former neighbor. But I know that they have a Delaware County team. And I think that that's something that we should also be looking at, asking. Now, I'll be the first to admit, they have some serious budget issues right now, but starting to look at alternative routes. Right now we have the 104 and I think it's the 100 that just goes to the corporate campus, but is there something that can take our residents to King of Prussia or, up and down 252? I think that's something that we should be evaluating as well.
Yeah, we've been actually talking about that from 2 different levels. And you're right. I mean, one of the reasons why we're asking developers to put in bus shelters as they go along, that's been a big push over the last couple of years. And I believe that you increase bus riding when you have places where people are willing to wait and they feel safe. And right now, many of our bus stops are on the side of a hill and there's not even a pad to stand on. It makes it kind of difficult. SEPTA is very willing to work with us. Bus shelters are something we would have to do on our end. They're not putting bus shelters in, which I understand, and they sure don't want to maintain them. But it's definitely something that we should look at. It's actually a whole different look at traffic congestion, but I think it's something that really needs to be looked at. Well,
about bike lanes.
Yep.
One of the other thing, the traffic in and of itself is one issue, but I think the other, probably not necessarily an easy, but it doesn't include moving traffic away, is the timing, I think, of lights is absolutely critical.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that can probably be accomplished easier than, getting the traffic moved. If you look, just an example, everybody's talking about the Route 3 and 252, the light at Gentili's down at Alpha Drive is not in time. That's why everything backs up into 252 or into Route 3 because it's all backed up in there. Same thing, interesting going west or going eastbound, pretty much once you get to Media Line, for the most part, the congestion really lightens out. And I think a lot of that has to do with the timing and the flow of the way the traffic is moving, irregardless of the amount of volume.
It's like going down West Chestnut Street or Market. If you're going into the city, if you hit the timing right, you don't stop at all.
Right.
Yeah.
When they're in sync.
Yeah.
When they're in sync.
Yeah.
George?
Yeah, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't part of the widening project happening on Westchester Pike an entire redesign of the timing of the lights?
It is.
And part of that is actually on 252, at least the initial lights on either side of it.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say it's the first set of lights. I think for sure going northbound. I think it goes all the way up to Sawmill. I'm not so sure southbound, but I know northbound.
That's a start.
Yep. But those are conversations we could be having with PennDOT.
Right.
PennDOT controls that, and actually PennDOT may be taking way more control of that. I know there's, without getting too far off track, because we've got about 10 minutes left. That's PennDOT's working on that, but we should be having those conversations.
So what is step 1 to achieve this outcome? Form a committee and start conversations with PennDOT and SEPTA?
And other municipalities.
Yeah.
Right.
That's step 1.
Right. And can't it be the same committee as the other?
Isn't it this speeding committee?
Yeah.
That's what we thought.
Yeah.
Did you have another comment, Bill?
No,
I
it
think
was
that-
the same comment.
Yeah, okay.
How about leverage the speeding committee?
And I think that the only thing I would just tweak a little bit on that is that in terms of the relationships with the other municipalities, I personally think that owners should be on individual members of the board of supervisors to sort of have that conversation with our colleagues, whether it's Commissioner Marple or Radnor or one of the supervisors in Edgemont or supervisors in Willistown. I think we collectively could have a pretty good success at fostering that relationship. I think, for most of us, we know some of them already. And there is like a Delaware County Supervisors organization that is chaired by Frank. Come on, what's Frank's last name? Frank over in Chadds Ford, Frank Murphy. So I think that's the only tweak I would add to that. Give another night for Tina and I to go out and mingle with people.
I think, Bill, you can put down PennDOT and SEPTA relationships with them.
And I think Leonard brought up a good point, and I think it'll actually come up in the next directive or the one after. I'm having a brain moment, but the concept of looking at, public transportation as a way to ease, but also a concept of some complete streets. We're not very walkable. And so people get in their car and drive because there's not sidewalks that are available to walk all the way up and down, or you can't get to that area that you want to go. So you get in a car.
So bike lanes and sidewalks.
Yeah. Just because of time, I might suggest that we would move on to the last one.
Okay, roads are in good repair. How do we start achieving this outcome?
Well, we have an active road program, and Steve instituted funding so much per year, so we can do more roads than just what liquid fuel offers.
And we've been actively doing that. In fact,
right.
Did we add more this time because of the interest rates, Stephen? Did we take advantage of the fact that we could borrow more?
Well,
more roads, or?
Yeah, we actually did a couple roads that we weren't sure we were going to do because the price was so good. But we did 11 miles. The board approved 11 miles of roadway this year.
Yeah, that's huge.
So I think the objective is to continue the road program as it is. At least, or Steve might want to, or George may want to add more to that. But we've got a savings account that's earmarked for that.
Yeah, I might bring up a couple things. One is, George mentioned that we did the road evaluation back in 2012. I think one recommendation that I would have over the next couple of years is that we should redo that road evaluation. 2012 doesn't seem that long ago, but when you're looking at the roads, that's a long time. So I think we need to go back and reevaluate all the roads that are in and particularly those that have not been done. Reevaluate and take a look again. This is the second year of the avenues, George?
Yeah, we did it in 2018, so it's a full 2 years.
So really take a look at the impact of doing the
ultra thin bonded wearing course.
Thank you. I always say it wrong. But look at the impact of the ultra thin bonding course and see if it's really doing what we think it's going to do. Do we use it in a couple other places to extend the life so we can tackle some areas that are really bad?
If I remember correctly, Stephen, you had talked previously about some private streets that perhaps, which are in poor repair because they're private streets, and perhaps some of those should become township streets.
Well, I know there's been a lot of discussion. I mean, Leonard's probably living that better than anybody because his community is one of those that probably, I don't know, there's at least 4 or 5 segments just right around where he lives that are private streets. And so he probably hears about that pretty regularly. So yeah, that has been a discussion that, you know, is there one, how do we educate folks that they're buying on a private street? Because people don't always know. We're really running into that issue in the Florida Park area right now while we're doing paving. And two, for those that are already there, you know, do we start looking at the possibility of figuring out, you know, can the township maybe take on some of those roads and, you know, what that looks like. Some people don't want us to.
Yeah, Steve, you just said exactly what I was going to say. It is remarkable because the amount of people who, when they do reach out to me or they stop me when they see Frank and I walking around, you know, the first thing they'll say is, "I'm paying all this taxes. I didn't know about this." And you know, I hear what they're saying, especially because I'm the one who gets a shovel and takes all the stone that's washed out of their street on my front yard and putting it back in the crater that's adjacent to their house. But number one, people don't realize that when they're buying it now, I mean, for the most part now, a lot of these people know because these roads are so hideous and so bad that they don't realize that. I mean, you have to realize that it's not a township road, but there is a section, I think it's on Hickory, that's a paved street. And you know, if you bought that, you would think that's a township road, but in fact, it's not. It's actually a private road that those residents came in and decided to maintain. But the issue comes to it is, and I'm shocked at how many times I keep using this word, but it comes down to education. And it's something that George and I have had multiple conversations on, is there is, again, a very somewhat simple solution to fixing that, but the price is going to be somewhat astronomical for some people, right. And other people just don't want to pay for it. You know, there's a way that you can have the township essentially take on the responsibility of getting the engineering done and making it, because it's got to be wide enough and have all the utilities and everything for the liquid fuels money. And then that money, then the cost of that gets essentially leaned to your property. But people just don't want to, you know, they don't want to pay that. But we, quite frankly, have never had that full conversation, in my opinion, with all these residents. It is something that, you know, George and I have had conversations on that we're going to be doing when we can get out of this post-COVID life. We're going to be having some town halls with a lot of my neighbors here, because I think it is time to have that conversation with a lot of them, especially because I'm tired of getting the boulders out of my front yard.
So does each of the houses that front on the street own a piece of the street, or is it collectively owned by all the property owners? Or I was just curious.
Usually it's a right of way that's owned by the property owners. It's a
collectively owned. So
collectively owned.
Each property owner doesn't own a piece of it.
Well, the center line, right?
Yeah. Well, it's either to the center line or you at least have an easement right to your home.
Yeah. What should be step one? Let the township know that, I'm sorry, George.
Yeah, I think step one should really be a revisiting of the 2012 survey and inventory of roads and update that. I think that's your template. Because since that was done, and again, the township can't maintain this kind of a pace, but right. since that's been done, we've resurfaced about 25 miles of the 52 plus miles that the township is responsible for. So, I mean, it has been a very hefty pace since 2013 that resurfacing's been done. But again, we need to go back and look at that engineering report and look at the other half of the roads and see where they're at. Because we've always tried to do it as best we could based on condition.
The other thing too, and this links back to the committee that we keep speaking about of having the relationship with PennDOT, is that for those state roads, that is again another avenue where having that relationship with PennDOT will be beneficial with this committee, because a lot of the state roads as well in the township are absolutely deplorable. Yeah. You know, you can't tell sometimes whether it's a state road or a township road based off of the condition, but you know, and the difficult thing is that, you know, you're dealing with a state agency. So I do think, again, it wraps back to having that relationship with PennDOT would be extremely beneficial to knock off at least 2, maybe 3 of these together.
I don't think a lot of people realize what roads are state roads in the township. We get field a lot of those calls in the office and people have no idea.
We have about 3
Yeah, and you
minutes.
can see that in the results. I mean,
Yeah.
in the comments as well.
Maybe something else is just let the public know what the township is doing and let them know that which are the state roads and it's not the township's responsibility. Maybe
George has that on the Public Works page, what roads are
Yeah.
state roads and
And that goes to, you know, it's definitely going to be brought up in, not to jump, but it's definitely going to be going into directive number 4, which is, I think that over the last couple of years, the township has gotten very good at putting communication on the township website, but residents, for whatever, well, actually I shouldn't say for whatever reason, residents have been accustomed to the fact that they couldn't get a lot of good communications out of the township. And I don't think that they go to the township website as a first choice. Now I think that is slowly starting to evolve. And to Suzanne's point, George every week, for instance, for the road program, puts all that information up there, the schedule,
Yeah.
the status, where we are. And again, I think that's one of those things that residents don't know about, but it's good information.
But as the strategic plan is put into place, they can report to the public, just, you know, here's another avenue to let the public know what's going on.
right.
So even though it's already there, I think the strategic plan, the supervisors, as they implement the strategic plan, should make that known to the public, again, as part of the achievement of the plan.
Just so everybody knows, we're going to start admitting people back in.
Okay. We need someone to report to the entire group our results. Someone be willing to do that. Bill recorded it. Would someone be willing to present this to the entire committee?
John.
I'm glad we're all jumping.
I can't read.
I can't read.
And
a
I
word
can't
with
see
that.
it.
I cannot see it.
You can't see this?
No, I even have trifocals, my friend, and my eyes are bad.
Let's see, let me try.
Would you want to do it,
Is that
Sonia?
helping?
Taking your own notes?
Can you see that?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I spent $5,000 on LASIK and I have no idea what we've been writing down. I'm just kidding, Bill.
Would you be willing, Sonia, since you were also taking notes and?
Yeah, I can go through some of my notes. They may not be.
You can use Bill's, but I mean, you also were writing things down, so you were.
Yeah,
Sonia, if I emailed this to you, would that help?
Yeah, try it. Let's see if I can do it that way.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I'm going to stop sharing and then email it to Sonia. I think I also have to email it over to Kathy.
Yes.
To Kathy and to me, to me as well.
Okay. All right. Hopefully it didn't go away. Saving it one more time. You hear a loud curse word.
Must be good.
So far, no cursing.
So funny, everybody's so quiet now. It's like when the teacher walks back in the classroom. We all spoke nonstop for 45 minutes and now.
Well, we were comfortable with each other.
Well, I hope we're comfortable with everybody else too. So.
Oh, Rich needs to be unmuted, Steve, please.
I've clicked on it several times for him to be unmuted.
You do it.
Well, that was,
There you
that was
go.
the magic one right there then. So we left our group. Everybody should be joining within the next couple minutes.
I figured when you showed up, nobody was hanging out in the old one.
And just to make sure that you and George or somebody's recording this one isn't on me to record, correct?
No, it's being recorded still.
Okay.
I think we may have lost Anita.
John had a hard time flipping over. I don't see him.
John's
He's
right
at the
there.
bottom.
Where's John? Oh, there's John. He's muted.
All right, here we come.
Wait, where's Anita? There's John. I like your background, John.
Thank you.
Who are we missing? Anita? Is that,
Go through the list. We're missing Andy.
he's
No,
there.
Andy's
He's
here.
here. Andy's here.
Oh, sorry, Andy. You're right in the
I
middle of the
think
pack.
I think it's just Anita.
Chris isn't here yet either.
There's Mike and Chris.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to leave Anita out, but I'm gonna. George is a co-host. Rich, I'm gonna make you a co-host as well.
Okay.
That way, if I don't know if you'll see her show up.
If I'm the co-host, I should.
I think so. All right, so for this last section, we're going to spend the next 40 minutes or thereabouts reviewing what the two groups did. So Kathy, you've sent your copy over to Bill.
I did, and to you.
And to me. And Bill sent his copy actually out to the two of us plus Sonia.
It's on the way.
On the way. All right. So the group that was that had left us and come back, who is
Steve,
going
I don't
to
mean
be?
to interrupt you. Chris says he is still waiting.
He's still waiting.
Yeah, so as a co-host, I can't see them getting back in apparently.
Yeah, I do not see them either.
Unless
I don't-
he is in the old meeting, in which I will handle.
Did you hear anything from
Would you
Anita?
check to see if,
No, my suspicion is they're trying to get into the old meeting, so I'm gonna forward them the new link.
all right, thank you. Would you just forward it to both him and Anita? So while they're coming back, was there somebody from the group that was coming back that was going to be the spokesperson who's here? Did you all pick a spokesperson? No. Okay. Is there somebody who can speak for your group, what you came up with?
Anita.
Anita. Good answer. Not the one I was looking for, but that's a good answer.
She's a moderator.
Yeah. Kathy, with your notes, are you comfortable?
Uh-oh.
Yes, I mean, can I share my screen?
Yeah, go ahead and share your screen and kind of talk through.
Okay.
Wow.
So we started with the reduced speeding in neighborhoods, and 7 things here were kind of just thoughts that came about, talking about how we could prevent cut-throughs to the neighborhoods. Andy, I think, had said repair main roads to eliminate the cut-throughs. Speed bumps to have them in, John mentioned that we could have the residents can actually initiate speed bumps. And so we talked about that process a little bit, and how we need to maybe communicate that to the public, that maybe they're not aware that that's something that they have the capability of doing. That was number 5. And then number 6, there was, thoughts about concerns about emergency response if we have too many speed bumps or speed humps in the area, because it'll slow them down from getting to any emergent type. And lastly, there was talk about looking at roads where they had complaints and maybe putting in temporary speed bumps to see what the impact would be. And then if the impact is what we expect it to be, then look at getting them made permanent. And it was said that the township was already starting to work on this pre-COVID, and then everything sort of stopped. So from that, we came up with goals. Our first goal was to kind of identify the neighborhoods that are having issues by communicating to the residents what the process could be to initiate a speed bump or a speed hump, and study the requests, survey the neighborhoods, have a speed study completed. And it was brought up that it may need to happen post-COVID, because the traffic now is very different from what the traffic was. So that was the first goal. The second goal, to communicate to the community that they have options for speeding in their neighborhoods, and what that entails. 3 would be to keep the traffic moving on the main roads, so drivers don't have to look at other routes. So if we keep, the main roads clear of repairs and things, they won't look to cut through neighborhoods. And 4 was continue with temporary speed bumps and study outcomes to decide if a permanent solution would be beneficial. Then we moved on to talk about traffic congestion and improving the flow of the traffic. Some of the things we came up with was to make room for other ways for people to move around, i.e. having more sidewalks and bike lanes available. John mentioned that if we do a sidewalk, then that would create an assessment issue for residents, which they might not be happy about. And then stoplights could have lights timed differently to help improve traffic flow, especially around the school areas. Talked about updating traffic studies that should be performed on 252 and Route 3. And also to look at alternative parallel routes for 252 and Route 3, which included the Bryn Mawr bypass, which we know that they were trying to secure some funding for that from a grant. And then also, if we're doing that, to add bike routes to any bypasses that would be built. So the goals we came up with were to identify where bike lanes and sidewalks need to be placed and try to secure funding into 2022, because Rick, I think it is, said that they had already put in for next year and they were denied. Consider traffic studies post-COVID and see how schools are going to open back up, because that's going to obviously affect traffic flow. And then upon completion of the construction on Route 3, review the timing of the lights, because it's not going to really do anything to do it during the construction. Then we moved on to roads in good repair. And so some of the things we came up with were to communicate to the community and the residents to contact the state representatives to get PennDOT to fix the roads, because it's really not as much a township issue as more of a PennDOT. And John mentioned that if residents write letters and contact them more frequently, that would get more done. State money from liquid fuel dollars are going to be decreasing most likely next year due to the COVID, because less driving equals less liquid fuel dollars for road repairs. And John mentioned that 252 is on the plan to be resurfaced this year, and to take private roads from the public good. I think that came up in a comment. But one of the drawbacks of that is that the roads are not built to the township specifications. So they would have to be improved before that could happen. And that's what we talked about.
All right. Sonia, you were going to speak for the other group. Can I, Bill, do you want to go ahead and share your document again?
Sure. Sonia, you got it, right? Sonia?
I have
Can you
it.
read it? Okay.
I have it. So just generally speaking, we addressed some of the same issues that you addressed. So I'm going to try not to repeat some of the things that the first group has already talked about. One comment that was brought up throughout our meeting was creating a kind of like a traffic committee, that the issues under Directive 1 are significant and they're going to take years to resolve. And so we should have a committee that can stick with it through those years to meet the different directives. And that same also developing relationships with the Board of Supervisors, with the surrounding townships, PennDOT, the utility companies, and SEPTA, to try to alleviate some of the congestion, help with the timing of the road repairs, and increase public transportation options for the township. So with that backdrop, when we talked about the speeding issues, that committee would break up the township into the different towns within the township, so to speak, and try to see where the streets that are the most problematic and the intersections that are most problematic. And that committee might start with just very simple things like making sure the stop signs are visible, painting stop lines and putting the word stop down on the road to assist with that, making sure the speed limit signs are also visible. And some of the suggestions within Appendix A were also addressed about turning some of the streets into one-way streets for different times of the day, and having police presence during the busy times and at busy intersections that are really bad. Even just having a police officer at the intersection that's a problematic one might encourage people to slow down and take their time through the neighborhoods and the intersections. And just like the first committee talked about speed bumps, we also talked about traffic circles. And like I said, I'm gonna try not to repeat what the first committee said, just to keep it going.
Yep.
With respect to traffic congestion, that same committee, like I said earlier, would develop these relationships with the surrounding towns to assist with ways that we can divert traffic. A lot of the congestion in Town Square is coming from other neighborhoods. And if we can develop avenues from other neighborhoods that could be used as an artery for people to get to and from places, that might also reduce the congestion within New Town Square. We think everything is on the table. Nobody really wants a bypass through their neighborhood, but I don't think, we don't think we can ignore it. We just have to look at all the options and see what might be the least problematic for our residents, but we can't take anything off the table at this time. The traffic is just too bad through the town. Again, we talked about the timing of the lights and just like the first group mentioned. And the same thing as the first group, encouraging public transportation, more walkways, more bicycle lanes, and so forth. And then with road repair, again, we don't want to fix a road and then have one of the utilities come in and chop it back up to put down a new line or a new pipe. So with this committee, that relationship with these utility companies might assist with not taking a step forward and then falling back 2 steps. But the road repairs, actually, there's already a common traffic policy in place that was put in place back in 2012, 2013. It's been systematically gone through, and it just needs to be looked at and if need be, revised and updated. But there's a system already going through, and since 2013, of the 52 miles of roadway in Newtown Square, 25 of which have been repaved, and they're still working towards repaving the last 27 miles of it. And that is what we went through. And of course, through all this, especially with the committee, educating the residents about the different policies, the different programs in the township, and the power that they have to affect a change in their neighborhood with the proper forms and submissions. And I think that's it. If I missed something, somebody please speak up.
I was actually going to just say that from either group, if they felt like something was missed from their group, now would be a good time to share that. The fact that I'm not seeing any hands and hearing anything, I take it that everybody feels like most everything was shared well.
Yep.
Having heard both groups, does anyone have any comment they would like to make before we take the next step? So let me do this. In regards to the 2 groups, there was a lot of similarities that came through. Probably the one distinction was this concept of a committee, I think was a definite difference from the 2. From the group that was meeting that didn't have that as their piece, is there any thought about that? Is that something that you think would be worthwhile, something that you have a concern about? And from everyone, what would the makeup of the committee look like?
I guess I'll go first.
Go ahead, Leonard.
I think that to achieve the objective of having the entire township looked at, you should have residents, if not 2, then at least 1 from each precinct.
Yeah.
Starting off with that, I think, sorry, George, that George Sheretz will be sitting front and center of this committee. I also think it's important that we have 2 supervisors on that. I know we can't have 3 or more, so I think that we should have 2. And that'll make sense because of what I mentioned of having the communication and building that relationship, as Sonia said, not just with PennDOT, but with surrounding municipalities, for us to have that opportunity to speak to, Radnor commissioners or Marple commissioners and Edgemont supervisors, so on and so forth. So those are at least the first couple of stakeholders I could think of.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else have any thoughts about that?
I think that makes sense. It's not a huge group. Sometimes if you get too many people involved, that you're counterproductive. But then you'd have representation from each area.
I would, the only thing I might add would be, I might add at least somebody from the police department. Just if we're talking
Yep.
about police being involved in the process.
Oh yeah, I
think
forgot
they-
to volunteer the chief. Yes, him as well.
I didn't volunteer the chief. I kept it somebody.
If he's not reading one of those books in back of him, I want to make sure he's at the meeting with us.
I nominate him as well.
All right.
Hmm.
All right. Is everybody in agreement that that makes sense? Is there anybody who would be opposed to having a committee that would be a part of that or would do that? George, this was your chance. You didn't jump at it.
Oh, dear.
All right. So if I recall right, now one of the things that I think Leonard suggested was one from each precinct. And we did, the one group did talk about the concept of breaking the town into, multiple neighborhoods so that you could tackle this, looking at it from a neighborhood standpoint versus trying to, the idea of eating an elephant one bite at a time versus eating it all at once. But the idea of looking at the neighborhoods, and I think even the group that went first talked a little bit about this, and understanding what each of the different needs are and the education. And we talked about that happening out of the committee and allowing the committee to do that. Is everybody comfortable with that?
Pick the right committee people.
Well, I mean, it's all key.
Yeah.
Selecting the right committee always makes a difference.
Well, you had a great strategic plan committee. You guys were awesome, focused, got it done. So if we can repeat that, that would be great. That type of individual, let me just say that way. I don't mean you guys all over.
So, all right.
Linda,
Linda
you have
has
something to
a
say?
Hand.
I'm sorry.
You have a hand from Linda.
I just was wondering if also on that committee, maybe on occasion you should have a planner to advise with one of the regional planning or Delaware County planning, where maybe that's not a cost. Without a cost involved to the township, but I think to have an expert in planning would also be valuable.
Linda, can you turn your volume up a little bit?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Did you hear? Just think a planner would be beneficial.
Mhm.
Yeah, expert in planning community, because that will tie in and help guide maybe some of the questions that the community have.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I made note to that. One of the things that came out from both groups was this concept of really communicating to the community and communicating particularly related, sorry, just trying to look at notes at two different places. Tried to communicate particularly related to our current traffic calming, as well as, what some other options are. Any thoughts on I mean, I understand we're going to have the committee do that, but do we want to give any ideas about how to accomplish that communication? I know one of the things that I think was suggested in our committee was the idea that there might be some like town halls related to the road for private roads. and having some discussions with those groups. But is there any ideas that anyone has that we want to kind of document from this, of some things that we want to do with education with the public?
Our group had suggested that it something get put on the website. Maybe even through social media or something along those lines, just to get the word out to people.
You have a list of emails, don't you now? Shoot out some emails.
We can do blast.
Yeah.
I think to Kathy's point, to have a comprehensive tab on the township website of every bit of information that we'd want the community to know, and to give them some tools so that they could sort of feel that they have some sense of control and ownership, and just knowledge. So I think.
Right. Like having the actual like what you need to do. Like John went through the whole thing, and I didn't know any of that. So it was very helpful to know that there was a process in place. I just don't think it's well communicated to people who have a problem. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. That's exactly what I said in our breakout session as well. And I don't know if it has to do with the fact that, years prior, the township was not so great with communications that people don't think to go to the website, but I think that's something that's changed over the last 5 years, and it's consistently getting better, and it will continue to get better. But there is information up there. It's just that, I don't know if we need to make it more streamlined so people can access it or find it easily, or they just know that, hey, we're no longer in the Stone Ages like we were 5 years ago. You can go to the website and get the information, because it is amazing. I mean, a lot of the things that when people reach out to any of us, I think they're amazed that the information is right there.
Yeah.
Just something so simple as when we do finally open from COVID, having signs in the lobby of the township building and and at the library entrance, because there's a lot of people that go in and out of there. So I think maybe if we can direct, if there's some kind of notice that can just be hung up. I mean, it sounds so simple, but people do stop and read those.
We have those screens, those TV screens that we can loop things through.
Yeah.
I forgot about this.
Trying to say something too.
Not to jump ahead in further into the document, but one of the things that we'll be looking at later on is making government more accessible. And one of the things that we did discuss was improvements to the website to maybe make it more easy, or make it easier for people to find things such as the plan and, different ordinances that maybe people just can't find at this point, particularly people that are not quite as computer literate as others are.
Well, what I tell a lot of residents, because we hear this frequently, is, and some of the steps to get to things just are a little twisted. That search bar can be your best friend. If they just put anything in that search bar, it will take you right to the information that you need, because sometimes it is a little tricky to maneuver.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to make excuses, but I look at, and looking at other townships that some of them have done it a little bit better and more streamlined. But when I look at other organizations, I look at them and they're trying to communicate about 5 or 6 things.
Yeah.
And you can do that really easily. When you're trying to communicate about 50, 60 different things, it's like it gets lost. And so we do want to look for ways to do it better and to make it easier. So that is something, and I think you're right, Walt. I think when we get a little bit further ahead, it's going to be something that we're going to look at again. So we did talk, both groups talked about the traffic calming, and I think we've talked about that. One thing that I think did come up was the potential of rewriting the traffic calming policy to make it more, maybe a little bit more user-friendly and a little more simple, and just to reevaluate that. Are we comfortable with that going through the committee, or is that something that we would want to see being done simultaneously, either being done by staff or being taken on by somebody else?
I think that might be an in-house project, since we kind of are going to be familiar with the steps, and maybe we'll be able to simplify it better for the masses.
Yeah, I would actually agree with that.
You could always get some feedback from the committee once you've done that.
Right. Right. Sonia?
I was just going to say the same thing as Anita said, just to keep the consistency between what the traffic committee is doing and the speeding committee, the transportation committee, however you want to call it, to keep that consistent with what they're doing and what the township's doing.
Yeah.
Did I miss anything on the neighborhood piece that we need to cover? And what I think we're going to do is I will meet with the staff and we'll try to put these into some kind of goal time frame to bring back to this group for review, versus us trying to, I think, to take the next 20 minutes and do that might be difficult to get the specific goals knocked out. But we'll come up with the first go round, bring it back to this group, and we'll look at that if that's okay with the group. And so we'll do that. Under the traffic congestion, a couple things that were brought up. One was the concept of meeting with PennDOT. I think that came out of both groups, being more involved with that. We talked about the committee being involved in that. Everybody's okay with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we talked about looking at, potentially some working with other communities to look at it more as a whole approach, particularly the communities up and downstream from 3, or that's east and west, but up and downstream from 252 going into Chester County and then going down, Upper Providence and such, going down that way. Leonard brought up the suggestion that the supervisors be involved in that. Does that make sense to the group?
Yeah.
I would say yes.
Is that something the Westchester Coalition will also be involved in?
Yes, and it may be that we look at creating we have a Westchester Pike Coalition, but maybe we suggest that there's also a 252 Coalition kind of approach, that you're bringing in the communities that are impacted north and south of us. I don't know that we need that right away, but it might be something that comes out over time. We also, both groups brought up the concept of walkability and, biking and bus shelters and things like that. Are we comfortable with most of that coming from the committee in setting up the pace of how that is, or do we want to set some specific guidelines that would be set for the committee to try to achieve?
You think their assessment will drive their guidelines once they gel and figure out different avenues in the neighborhoods and whatnot, that they're going to figure out the priorities?
Well, I think there's two you know, I think the one challenge that we have is that we're tackling this from two different approaches. You know, the neighborhood issue is a little different than what's happening on 3 and 252. However, the neighborhoods that have the biggest problem are adjacent to 2 and to 3 and 252. So hopefully, you know, those that are on there, my brain is having a moment thinking through the precinct map, how everything falls. But you know, I think you have a pretty good representation of people living along Westchester Pike with the way the precinct map falls out. And you have a pretty good representation going up and down 252 as well. So any other thoughts about detail on those areas? Okay. Roads under good repair. One of the things we talked about was the idea of updating our road survey that was done in 2012. I think our group talked about potentially doing that within the next 2 years. Excuse me? All right. So our group talked about doing that in the next 2 years. The other thing.
Steve, would that match the plan that we have now from Stantec?
Actually, it would take the plan that Stantec did in 12 and just update it. I think that what we're finding is that some of what was done in 12, roads have deteriorated at different rates than what we thought it was. I think, George, you would say that there were some roads that got moved up because the roads deteriorated more quickly, and some roads that got moved further back because the other roads got moved up. And so we probably need to look at, I don't know whether it should be done every 5 years or done every 8 years or done every 10 years, but we probably need to have a plan that plan gets looked at and reevaluated on some regular basis, because, you know, my understanding is that there's some new technology that's even come out since 2012 that would allow you to have a better idea of what the substructure is underneath the road. John's shaking his head yes. So that you could probably do a better job of really evaluating the roads. And maybe we wouldn't have to do it as often as if we did that. Yes, George.
Okay.
Sure. So, and actually, I update that report about every 6 months based on things that have happened on the roads. But when Stantec did the original one in 12, it was an engineering standpoint. You know, I'm looking at it from utility work, from resurfacing, from work that we do on it. What we're talking about is a thorough going over everything. And, you know, they evaluate the cracking and they evaluate, you know, so many details beyond what we do when we update it every 6 months.
Okay.
And then I think that one of the things, you know, I've been playing with the number. That sounds terrible when you talk about finances, but anyway, I've been looking at the numbers related to what's going to happen when we've done this loan that's actually fairly substantial to do the 11 miles of roadway we're doing this year. It's a 5-year note, and what the impact is on getting that paid off. But also taking into account that we potentially are going to experience less income from liquid fuels. And so what is that going to look like and how long will that be down? And I don't think we're going to have answers in the next 6 months of what that is. I think that's going to be a couple years before we really see what that impact is. And so we're going to have to take that into account. But I think we can still come up with a plan based on where the dollars are today, and, you know, taking into account that, you know, I think liquid fuels easily could be cut, you know, somewhere between 25 and 40%. Did I miss anything that we talked about that we've left out that we really need to take a look at as a group before we end for the evening? All right, well then, here's what I would say. Thank you to everyone for joining us tonight. We're going to do this again next Wednesday night on the 15th. And we will be looking at Directive 2. So I would encourage you to look at those pages. We will meet together again and we'll have a shorter beginning meeting because we've kind of gone through everything. But we'll have a quick meeting together, get everybody back on the same page, and then we'll break into groups again. For the group that broke out, was it reasonable getting out and coming back? I know there's a couple problems coming back, but was it a problem that I waited to send it to you until we met together?
No.
No,
Okay.
you just have to get out. If you don't get out, you can't get back in the new one. That was the problem I had, but I figured it out pretty quick.
Okay.
Yeah, Steve, and we'll test this tomorrow, but I'm fairly certain that we got it all recorded.
Okay, good. So that's the reason for that, is to make sure we can record it, allow the public to be able to watch both sides, and also to make sure we have a good record. So thank you all, and we'll meet next Wednesday evening for this, and we'll be looking at Directive 2. And during that time, the staff will kind of get together and we'll see if we can't put some definite specific goals related to this and get them back before you as well. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Good night, everyone.
Look forward to seeing you.
Good night, everyone.
Some of
Good
you on
night.
Wednesday and the rest of you, or Monday, the rest of you on next Wednesday.
Sounds good.